The story begins with the protagonist's childhood, where he often spent time with a mysterious girl who called herself a princess. One day, in an empty school library, she suggests that they create a notebook together. Her idea was to gather everything they cherished and place it inside its pages. In her mind, the notebook was meant to become a special world built from the things they enjoyed. Although he did not fully understand what she meant, he listened to her explanation. She described a world that belonged only to the two of them, a place formed through stories and imagination. Curious about her idea, he began considering how they should start. At that time, he did not even know her real name. Even so, the two of them spent their days filling their shared world with countless things that interested them. As time passed, the world they created continued to grow larger. Every moment he spent with her felt extraordinary, leaving a lasting impression on his heart. Then, without warning, she vanished from his life. The days they spent together came to an abrupt end, and the world they had built no longer remained the same. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and woke from sleep. He realized that those memories were part of a dream, and even now, he can no longer remember the girl's face. As he reflects on the past, he wonders how many years have passed since those memories first took hold of him. Despite the passage of time, one feeling remained unchanged. He is still unable to let go of the person who had become his first love. One day, while the school library is empty, she suggests creating a notebook together. At Seri High School, he sits in the classroom while the lesson continues. The teacher is speaking, yet his attention drifts away from the lecture. He becomes absorbed in sketching, while his thoughts move far from the present moment. He finds himself reflecting on how he continues to chase the remaining fragments of a long-lost story that once felt like a separate world of imagination. No matter how much he tries to find it again, the girl from those memories is no longer present. It feels as if he alone remains inside that forgotten world. When class ends, Haibara hands his notebook to the class representative, Tomoya. He talks about meeting his girlfriend and jokes about introducing him to a girl interested in him. Embarrassed, Haibara quickly turns the idea down. Tomoya laughs and remarks that his shy personality is exactly what makes him popular, leaving Haibara surprised. At that moment, another student passes by outside the classroom and calls out to Tomoya, inviting him to go for karaoke. Tomoya agrees and prepares to leave. Before leaving, he introduces Haibara to the other student. After that brief interaction, Tomoya leaves with his friend, leaving Haibara behind. As he walks away, Haibara falls into thought again. Since that period, he has found it difficult to form close connections with others. He looks at a photograph and wonders what the girl from his memories would think if she saw it. He feels that the fragile memory of that world could break at any moment if he gets too close to people, yet keeping distance also brings its own discomfort. Since that day, his life continues in a fixed pattern. After returning home, he repeatedly draws the same imagined world in his notebook, recreating it over and over again. His days continue in repetition without change. Although he does not feel completely unhappy with his current life, he senses that even in adulthood he may continue this same cycle. Still, he cannot ignore the feeling that his youth is slowly being spent inside these repeated drawings and lingering memories. Inside the school library, Haibara notices a couple nearby, and his attention briefly shifts toward them. However, he quickly dismisses those thoughts and returns to the sense that the situation he is in carries personal importance at that moment. Without warning, a loose sheet of paper moves through the air and strikes him, causing him to react with surprise. When he examines the page more closely, he understands that it is a blank sheet attached to another document. At that moment, he is reminded of the past. It is spring, and only 7 days have passed since the girl he once knew disappeared from his life. Nearby, a girl stands holding several papers, some of which are being carried away by the movement of air inside the library. Haibara notices her for the first time, feeling an unfamiliar sense of surprise as her presence contrasts with the world of thoughts he usually remains in. Without deliberate intention, he moves closer and retrieves one of the papers that has been displaced, returning it to her. She acknowledges the gesture upon receiving it. As he turns to leave afterward, she holds onto his bag, causing it to slip and fall. She questions his attempt to leave without helping, which makes him pause as he becomes aware of her insistence. He then chooses to remain and assist her, shifting his focus away from leaving and instead beginning to collect the scattered papers that have fallen across the floor. While collecting the papers, Haibara remains slightly unsettled. He continues the task while noticing details about her and the closeness of the situation, struggling to keep his thoughts controlled and prevent them from drifting into discomfort or distraction. After completing the collection, he returns the papers to her. She explains why the papers are important and thanks him for helping. He then realizes that what he has been collecting is actually related to her drawings, something he had not noticed before. When he examines one of the pages more closely, he observes highly detailed artwork executed with precision and confidence. The level of skill surprises him, and for a brief moment, his attention becomes fully absorbed by the drawing itself. She then mentions that she often uses reference materials when studying poses and anatomy for her artwork. Haibara becomes mentally unsettled by this explanation. Processing her openness and approach to her work proves difficult for him, and he struggles internally to understand how to respond appropriately. The discussion continues casually from her side while he remains internally overwhelmed, trying to manage his thoughts as he processes both her personality and the unusual nature of the situation unfolding in front of him. As he continues helping with the papers, he notices that she keeps watching him closely. Her gaze makes him uncomfortable, and he becomes aware that it remains fixed on him longer than expected. When he reacts, she appears confused and does not understand the reason for his discomfort. The situation becomes even more awkward when she casually mentions making adjustments to her artwork, treating the matter as something completely ordinary. Haibara, however, does not share her attitude and finds himself increasingly unsettled. As she continues speaking without hesitation, he begins to wonder whether her calm behavior is hiding something far stranger than it first appears. He then points out that creating drawings of that nature could easily attract unwanted reactions from others, especially within a school environment. In response, she explains that she simply enjoys drawing the things that interest her, and that there is nothing unusual about following her own preferences. While listening to her explanation, Haibara finds it difficult to relax. It feels as though she can see through thoughts he prefers to keep hidden. At the same time, despite his discomfort, he cannot completely pull his attention away from her. A moment later, she calls out to him and points out that his attention seems directed elsewhere. Rather than focusing on the person in front of him, she suggests that he appears to be searching for someone who is no longer present. Her observation catches him off guard. Although they have only just met, she speaks as though she has noticed something personal about him. The unexpected closeness of her words makes him uneasy, and he instinctively feels the need to create some distance between them. After gathering the remaining papers, he returns them to her and concludes that everything has been collected. He then prepares to leave and starts heading home. Before he can go far, however, she stops him and expresses gratitude for helping recover the pages of her manuscript. She introduces herself as Misora Ruikawa and then asks for his name in return. He initially tries to avoid the introduction, believing her thanks are sufficient, but she persists. Eventually, he gives his full name and identifies himself as Hajime Haibara. After hearing it, Misora repeats his name to herself as though committing it to memory. Later that night, Hajime sits alone at the desk in his room with a notebook spread out before him. While working on his drawings, his thoughts repeatedly return to Misora. He feels irritated by how freely she speaks despite having met him only that day. The encounter continues to occupy his mind, making it difficult for him to focus on drawing. As he stares at the unfinished pages before him, his thoughts gradually shift from their conversation toward her artistic ability. He recalls the precision of her technique and the strength contained within her illustrations. The quality of her work leaves a strong impression on him, and he cannot help wishing he possessed the same level of skill. He believes that if he can transfer the images in his mind onto paper with complete accuracy, he will finally be able to finish the world that exists within his imagination. That world is the same one he once shared with the girl from his childhood. Everything connected to her disappears when she leaves, except for a single remaining notebook. Since then, Hajime continues pursuing the unfinished continuation contained within that final volume. He wants to reach the conclusion of the story they had once created together. As he thinks about that goal, another question quietly emerges in his mind. He begins to wonder whether something else might exist beyond the completion of that story. Something waiting beyond the destination he has been chasing for so many years. The following day at Seirei High School, Hajime Haibara continues thinking about the previous day, still unable to reach a clear conclusion regarding the situation involving Misora. While walking through the corridor, he notices Misora speaking with two other students. They congratulate her on receiving an award and mention having seen her artwork. They also refer to her future plans related to art education. Misora responds calmly before the conversation continues briefly in front of him. Haibara observes the scene and feels that the area near the staircase is difficult to approach, so he considers taking another route. At the same time, he realizes he has been left out of information he was not aware of earlier. He learns that Misora has been creating storyboard work for illustrated content carrying adult themes, something he had not known before. As he moves upward on the stairs, he notices a displayed painting featuring Mizora's name and a title connected to a shared theme between two people. Seeing it again changes his perception of the artwork he had previously admired. Although he had once found it impressive, it now feels different, carrying both familiarity and distance. While he studies the display board, Misora suddenly appears behind him and speaks directly. Her sudden presence startles him. She comments on his behavior and points out how closely he is observing the artwork, suggesting others might misunderstand his intentions. Haibara attempts to leave and prepares to move away. She then brings up their previous interaction and asks about his interest in drawing without warning. He reacts with confusion, questioning the sudden direction of the conversation and insisting there is no deeper meaning behind it. Without hesitation, Misora takes his hand. He immediately reacts in surprise and questions her action. She briefly examines his hand and comments on its condition, mentioning the difficulty of handling certain writing tools under such circumstances. She explains that she occasionally works in a similar way and continues speaking while maintaining physical contact. She then suggests exchanging contact information but realizes she does not have her phone with her at that moment. She asks him to extend his hand again. Haibara complies, and she begins writing information onto his hand using a pen. She explains that it might feel unusual, but assures him it is manageable. She also mentions that she can memorize such details quickly and efficiently. As she continues, Haibara becomes increasingly unsettled by the situation. He questions how she is able to remember such details so easily and struggles to process her behavior. She continues observing his reaction and comments on his nervous state, noting that the ink might require him to act quickly if he intends to use it properly. He internally concludes that the situation is becoming more complicated than expected and feels uncertain about how to respond or disengage from it. On Saturday, Hajime arrives at the location Misora Senpai has specified and waits for her arrival. Standing there, he questions whether he has come to the correct place and continues looking around, considering the possibility that he may have misunderstood the meeting point. A short time later, Misora arrives and calls out to him. After reaching him, she greets him and expresses satisfaction that he has come as planned. When she notices his uncertain expression, she asks about it. Haibara dismisses the matter and instead turns his attention to her. He finds it unusual that she has arrived so early despite there still being plenty of time before anything requires urgency. Misora offers no detailed explanation and simply states that he will understand the reason later. With that, she immediately begins moving forward, expecting him to follow. Haibara remains in place for a brief moment, watching her walk ahead. When Misora notices he is not moving, she asks why he is still standing there. He again avoids giving a clear answer, but his attention shifts toward the luggage she is carrying, and he wonders whether he should be the one responsible for it instead. As he continues hesitating, Misora calls back to him and warns that she will continue ahead without waiting if he does not follow. Realizing he has fallen behind, Haibara finally follows her. Eventually, they arrive at their destination. Upon seeing the large building in front of him, Haibara immediately recognizes it as Tokyo Big Sight. The scale of the venue surprises him, and he finds himself staring at it as he takes in the sight. After arriving, he is immediately struck by the enormous number of people gathered there. Having never visited such a place before, he feels overwhelmed by the scale of the crowd and constant movement around him. As he continues looking around, Misora gradually disappears from sight among the visitors. Haibara attempts to follow her path, but the density of people quickly makes it impossible to track her. He moves through the crowd, trying to avoid bumping into others, becoming increasingly concerned as he realizes he has lost sight of her completely. Before he can decide what to do next, someone suddenly takes hold of his hand. Startled, he turns and discovers it is Misora, who has managed to find him despite the crowd and checks whether he is unharmed. After reassuring her that he is fine, Haibara asks the question that has been on his mind since arriving. He wants to know the purpose of bringing him to such a place. Misora then explains that she wants him to assist with sales during an event taking place that day. Hearing this surprises him, especially after being directed toward the preparation area connected to the booth. Misora assures him that he is exactly where he is supposed to be. She describes the place as a gathering where people present what they genuinely care about and share it with others who appreciate it. As Haibara observes the people around him more carefully, he notices the remarkable level of talent surrounding him. Everywhere he looks, individuals are displaying artwork and creative projects made through their own effort and dedication. One after another, he sees examples of artistic skill far beyond his expectations. The more he observes, the more he realizes that everyone present appears deeply committed to their work. The quality of illustrations and creative displays leaves a strong impression on him, revealing a side of the artistic world he has never encountered before. Misora then turns her attention to preparations and encourages him to get ready as well. As Haibara takes in the atmosphere, he comes to understand that an entirely unfamiliar world has existed beyond his awareness, a world filled with people devoted to creating and sharing what they love. Misora shows him a manga and tells him it will be sufficient for the situation. She decides to step away briefly to get a drink and asks him to wait near the area until the venue officially opens. Left alone, Haibara looks at the manga in his hands. He realizes he has seen Misora's illustrations before, but he has never read her completed manga. Based on the cover, he assumes it contains mature themes, though his attention soon moves beyond that impression. As he reads, he becomes absorbed in its structure and composition. Despite its short length, the story feels carefully constructed, with each part arranged to create a strong emotional impact. Even though the ending is positive, a subtle emotional contrast lingers after finishing it. He notices that the work contains mature elements, but what stands out most is the level of detail in the illustrations and the way emotions are conveyed through characters and scenes. The combination of storytelling and visual expression leaves a strong impression on him, and he feels a desire to reach a similar level of artistic ability. At that moment, Mizora calls his name. He reacts and realizes time has passed more quickly than expected, and the event is about to begin. Shortly afterward, the event officially starts. Haibara takes a seat behind the sales table and observes the setup in front of him. He quickly realizes he is unfamiliar with the environment and struggles internally to understand what is expected of him. Mizora gives brief instructions before returning to her work. He watches her carefully as she prepares to engage with visitors. As attendees begin arriving, people express interest in the works being presented. Some request copies, others mention anticipation for release, and several express admiration for the creator. Observing this, Haibara becomes aware of the atmosphere around the event. He sees how the creator shares her work directly with people who appreciate it, and how those interactions create genuine connection. Watching Mizora's expression as she interacts with visitors, he understands more clearly the world she wants to show him. He begins to recognize that this place is built on sharing passion and receiving response from others. In that moment, he reflects on what it means to express something sincerely. He realizes that sharing what one loves and receiving that response creates a form of connection he has not fully understood before. The atmosphere at the event becomes noticeably calmer as time passes. Mizora observes the shift, and then asks Haibara whether he has begun to enjoy the experience or the environment around him. He responds internally while watching everything unfold. He begins to feel that enjoyment itself is a form of success here, and that ability or skill is not the only factor that matters. He reflects on how effort and participation hold their own value in such a setting. Mizora continues speaking in a straightforward manner. She admits she has been worried about his first impression and the possibility that her drawing style caused misunderstanding when they first met. She acknowledges his reaction and thanks him for being present with her. She explains that bringing him there was meant to show him a world where people share what they love and receive that passion in return. She also states that she believes he naturally expresses what he cares about through his own work, and in her view he is similar to her. Haibara listens quietly, reflecting on her words and the situation around him. He begins to feel that the ordinary, unchanging days he once experienced have started to take on new meaning since meeting Mizora Rurikawa. The environment, people, and creative energy around him feel different from anything he has known before. He thinks about how this place marks the beginning of a change in his perspective. What once felt static now appears to hold depth and variation, and he realizes this experience has introduced him to a new way of seeing the world. A few days after that encounter, Haibara continues with his usual routine. When classes end for the day, he quietly gathers his belongings and prepares to leave the classroom. As he finishes packing his bag, Tomoya approaches him and bids him farewell before heading out. Haibara returns the greeting, addressing him as the class representative. Everything appears completely normal. The day unfolds no differently from any other. To Haibara, it almost feels as though the events from several days earlier never truly happened. The memories seem distant, as if they belong to something he merely imagined rather than something he actually experienced. Suddenly, his phone vibrates. He checks his phone and sees a message from Mizora Senpai, thanking him for his help. He replies that he enjoyed the time with her, and she then suggests they walk home together after school. Later that day, the two of them leave school side by side and head home together. As they walk, Haibara cannot shake a strange feeling. Something seems slightly different from before, though he cannot fully explain what has changed. Not long ago he was able to hold Mizora's hand, but only because of a particular situation. The memory remains vivid in his mind. Whenever he thinks about reaching for her hand again, an uneasy sensation rises within him, making it difficult for him to even imagine doing so. While walking, his attention drifts toward her. Without realizing it, he studies her face for a moment. When she notices his gaze, he immediately becomes flustered and quickly looks away. In response, she remarks that she hopes nothing is wrong and then thanks him once again. She admits that it meant a great deal to her. The moment leaves Haibara feeling embarrassed. Looking back on his reaction, he feels that he handled it poorly. Even so, he sincerely tells her that he is glad he went. After a brief pause, a question that has been lingering in his mind finally comes to the surface. He asks her the reason she invited him out that day. Mizora takes a moment to think. Her answer is vague and difficult to define. She explains that it was simply a feeling she had at the time. Haibara finds himself unconvinced. He wonders whether a simple feeling could truly be the entire reason. Then again, he realizes that such an explanation is not especially surprising coming from someone like Mizora. A moment later, she adds another reason. She mentions that he seemed useful as a source of reference material. Hearing this while she looks directly at him catches him completely off guard. At that moment, he is reminded of how impressive she had been during the event. Even so, the thought crosses his mind that she can be rather unusual at times. As their conversation continues, she asks why he decided to follow her that day. Haibara explains that he felt things might become troublesome if she disappeared on her own. His explanation causes her to look confused, prompting him to elaborate further. He admits that no Senpai has ever acted toward him in the way she did. She doesn't fully understand what he means, and Haibara realizes she is unaware of the effect she has on others. He also knows his explanation is incomplete. Even now, he cannot understand why he couldn't let her leave at that moment, and the reason remains unclear to him. What he does know is that he is grateful he went there that day. The atmosphere of that place left a strong impression on him. The people he met felt welcoming and genuine. It was an experience unlike anything he had encountered before. Beyond that, Misora's book astonished him. The story immediately captured his attention, and the artwork exceeded all of his expectations. The quality of the work feels incredible to him. Even now, he finds it difficult to believe that something so impressive was created by a student. A gentle smile appears on Misora's face as she responds to Haibara. She is pleased to hear his thoughts and openly expresses how much his words mean to her. She tells him that she devoted all of her effort to creating those illustrations and that she poured everything she had into the project. A moment later, she turns away from him and looks ahead. Haibara calls out to her, prompting her to continue speaking about what she has been thinking. Misora admits that her search is not over yet. Although she has already accomplished a great deal, she still hopes to discover a place where her artistic work truly belongs. At the same time, she acknowledges that reaching her current position would have been impossible without the support and experiences that guided her there. Hearing this, he reflects on how much she has achieved. Even though she is older and more experienced than him, he realizes that she has carried the burden of her work largely on her own. Misora then returns to a topic she mentioned earlier. She explains that the feeling she spoke about before was what first drew her attention to him. She reveals that from the moment they met, she sensed something special about him. In her eyes, he possesses a quality that she feels she lacks herself. While she feels uncertain about having a personal world that belongs entirely to her, she believes the opposite is true for Haibara. According to Misora, he carries something unique within him. She is convinced that there is a place, a perspective, and a creative space that belongs only to him and no one else. Her words leave Haibara deep in thought. As he listens, a single idea continues to echo in his mind. He wonders about the meaning of the personal world Misora sees within him, and whether such a place truly exists. Later that evening, he sits alone in his room. Several notebooks are spread across his study desk as he quietly reflects on everything that has happened recently. His thoughts return to Misora's words about a personal world that belongs only to him. He begins to wonder whether the story he has cherished for so long could be the very thing she was referring to. However, the more he thinks about it, the less certain he becomes. That story did not originate from him alone. The princess also played a role in creating it. Because of that, he finds it difficult to consider it something that exists solely for his sake. Even so, his mind drifts back to the event he attended. He remembers how enjoyable the experience was and how deeply impressed he felt by the doujinshi he saw there. As those memories surface, he recalls something Misora once told him about a place where people can share the things they genuinely care about with others. Remembering those words causes him to reconsider the significance of his visit. He starts to wonder whether there was a greater meaning behind his decision to go there and whether the experience is connected to something important within himself. His gaze shifts toward the sketch he has been working on. The drawing depicts the beginning of a voyage toward an unfamiliar land, continuing the story he has carried with him for years. Yet as he studies the page, dissatisfaction quickly follows. He becomes painfully aware of his lack of artistic ability. The gap between the image in his mind and what appears on the paper frustrates him. He cannot help comparing his work to what Misora might have created in the same situation. The comparison only makes his shortcomings feel more obvious. While thinking about this, his pencil slips from his hand once again. The small accident immediately catches his attention. For reasons he cannot fully explain, he hesitates whenever he thinks about replacing it. The pencil has remained with him for a long time, and part of him feels reluctant to let it go. Beneath that reluctance lies another feeling he has carried for years. A portion of him still associates the princess's disappearance with his own actions. Although he cannot prove it, the thought continues to linger in the back of his mind. However, as he sits at his desk and reflects on everything that has happened, his perspective gradually begins to change. Rather than remaining trapped by those lingering doubts, he starts to believe that he should move forward according to what he truly wants. For the first time in a long while, he feels inclined to follow the direction his own feelings are leading him. The following day, Haibara approaches Senpai at school. She is standing near the staircase, quietly looking at the notices posted on the bulletin board. As he reaches her, he immediately apologizes for asking her to meet him there. Misora does not appear bothered by the request and reassures him that it is not an inconvenience. After gathering his thoughts, Haibara presents a sketchbook to her. He tells her that he worked on the drawing the previous evening after returning home and believes that it belongs with her. Misora looks at the sketchbook with curiosity. As she examines it, Haibara recalls a conversation they shared not long ago. He remembers her uncertainty about where she belonged and the feeling that she had yet to discover a place that was truly hers. At first, he had accepted those words without fully understanding them. However, seeing her work at the event and witnessing the passion she poured into her creations changed his perspective. Her artwork left a strong impression on him, and the determination he saw in her expression remained fixed in his memory. As he reflects on those memories, he admits that he is not very different from her. Even now, he cannot fully understand what she continues searching for. The answer remains beyond his grasp. Nevertheless, there is one thing he knows with certainty. The page he created exists because of her. The scene he drew, the journey it portrays, and the world taking shape within it only came into existence because their paths crossed. Without meeting Misora, that page would never have been created. Whenever he imagines giving that world the qualities that belong to her, he finds himself unable to continue drawing. The thought overwhelms him, causing his hand to stop moving across the paper. There is something he wants to say to her. The words remain clear in his mind, and he knows exactly what they mean. Yet each time he tries to voice them, they refuse to leave his lips. Before he can force himself to continue, Misora calls out to him and extends her hand toward him. For a brief moment he hesitates. Then he reaches forward and accepts her hand. At that instant, the thoughts he has been struggling to understand finally begin to connect. He tells her that he wants them to create stories together and share that journey side by side. As he stands there holding her hand, he finally understands the reason he could not bring himself to let her go on that earlier day. The answer is not something he arrived at through careful reasoning. It is simply a feeling that has remained with him from the beginning. Even so, that feeling now seems clearer than ever. Being with Senpai makes him believe that he can move beyond the person he has always been and step towards something new. Haibara and Misora sit together on a quiet staircase landing where almost no one passes by, allowing them to read the notebook without interruption. Even so, Haibara feels nervous. Normally, the idea of someone else seeing his drawings would make him panic, but that fear slowly eases as he sits there. It has been a long time since anyone other than the princess has seen the worlds he creates on paper. While sitting beside Misora, he briefly notices her relaxed posture. For a moment his attention drifts, but he quickly forces himself to refocus, since he tends to lose concentration when he feels anxious. After reading for a while, Misora calls his name and says she has a question before they continue. Haibara agrees and listens. She points to a creature in the story and asks what it is. He quickly explains that it is a wyvern. Misora studies it and admits she would have thought it was a dog if he hadn't told her, which surprises him. She then asks about another object in the drawing. Haibara explains that it is a weapon used by dragons, something between a sword and a spear. Misora listens carefully, but still looks unsure, continuing to examine the page as she tries to understand. As she turns more pages, her expression gradually brightens. Once she understands the setting, her interest in the story increases. She remarks that it would make a great manga, which embarrasses Haibara and makes him want to disappear. After going through several pages, Misora asks if he has time left. When he says he is free, she explains that she wants to start bringing this world to life right away instead of waiting. While they work, a sound comes from outside. Haibara looks toward the window and mentions it, but Misora doesn't notice anything unusual. He then wonders if he imagined it. A sudden gust of wind blows through the open window, scattering papers across the room. Haibara quickly apologizes and rushes to gather them. While picking them up, he notices several sketches. The drawings surprise him, but he has become somewhat used to Misora's style. As he looks through them, he is again impressed by her skill and attention to detail. Before he can continue, Misora quickly takes the papers from him and tells him not to look further, leaving him confused. She explains that she uses herself as a reference when drawing the human body, and she separates reference work from her finished characters. Haibara becomes flustered and realizes he may have crossed a boundary. He immediately apologizes for looking without permission. Misora puts the sketches back into her bag and says it is not a big issue. Still, she lightly teases him before returning to the work. Suddenly there is a knock at the door. Haibara freezes, startled since the building is isolated in a forest and he did not expect anyone else to be there. Rumors he heard earlier come back to mind, and he starts to feel uneasy. Misora calmly walks toward the door, which makes him even more anxious as he tries to stop her, but before he can speak, the door opens. A girl rushes in and immediately hugs Misora, surprising Haibara completely. He had assumed no one else knew about this place, so the appearance of another student shocks him. The girl then notices him and becomes suspicious, questioning why Misora is alone with a boy in such a place. She demands an explanation, but Misora steps in and introduces the situation. She explains that the girl is connected to the former art club, but the girl quickly corrects her, saying that it is not accurate. The girl then introduces herself as Kurumi Yamabuki. She says she greatly admires Mizora, looks up to her, and hopes to become like her one day. Mizora quickly dismisses the praise and tells her not to speak that way because it could create the wrong impression. As the conversation continues, Haibara quietly watches them. The relationship between the two girls feels different from anything he expected. Hearing Yamabuki speak with such strong admiration for Mizora leaves him confused, and he begins to wonder what kind of bond they share and what Mizora truly represents to her. Kurumi reintroduces herself and states that she is a big fan of Mizora Senpai. She clarifies her identity and asks that there be no misunderstanding. Haibara becomes uneasy as her behavior grows more intense and defensive. Mizora explains that there is a misunderstanding and asks Kurumi to let her go. Kurumi then questions Mizora about her closeness with the boy standing nearby. Haibara observes the situation, senses Kurumi's discomfort, and decides to respond calmly and politely. He introduces himself as Haibara Hajime. Kurumi reacts sharply, saying she already knows him since they are in the same class. Haibara then remembers her, realizing she feels different from how he usually perceives her. Kurumi becomes frustrated and tells him not to stare at her. She asks if he remembers her properly. Haibara apologizes and confirms that he does. Kurumi says the atmosphere between them feels different now, but adds that she does not mind. She also repeats that her attention is still on Miss Ora Senpai. Haibara thinks she is overly focused on Mizora. Kurumi then says she originally thought he was a quiet and harmless student, but now she is unsure. She adds that she will not allow anything that might interfere with Mizora. Haibara denies any such intention, but Kurumi insists that his behavior suggests otherwise. She points out that the place is intended for students and was arranged by a teacher. Haibara responds in confusion but accepts the explanation. Mizora then corrects the misunderstanding, while Kurumi becomes annoyed that her concerns are being dismissed. Mizora explains that she found an unused equipment room as a quiet place to work. She adds that this is why the space is small. Haibara responds that the space is still sufficient. Kurumi immediately praises Mizora, but her tone shifts again as she grows suspicious. She worries that Haibara might try to take Mizora away. Haibara quickly clarifies that this is not his intention and explains that he simply wants to create a story together with Mizora. Kurumi asks what he means by a story. Mizora then explains that she and Haibara are working together on a doujinshi project. Hearing this, Kurumi becomes excited and begins asking rapid questions about their collaboration, genre, and Haibara's role. He struggles to keep up with her intense questioning. Kurumi then insists on seeing the work immediately, but Mizora explains that it is still unfinished and promises to show it once completed. Kurumi apologizes for her excitement but insists she still wants to see it, saying she trusts Mizora's work will be impressive. She also expresses interest in helping at future sales events and asks about previous event results. Mizora responds uncertainly, saying she is not fully sure about the results. Haibara watches Kurumi and notices how strongly focused she is on Mizora, with little attention to anything else. He briefly wonders if he is reading the situation correctly or overthinking it. Kurumi then notices Mizora's drawing and comments on it, asking about part of the composition. Mizora quickly stops her, saying the work is still unfinished. In the confusion, Kurumi and Mizora lose their balance and fall. Haibara reacts in concern and asks if they are alright. Kurumi stands up and questions the sudden movement, suggesting they should be more careful. Mizora warns her not to touch certain areas while getting up. Kurumi then notices a loose page among the materials and picks it up despite Mizora trying to stop her. Kurumi says she will not judge what she sees. The page turns out to contain an explicit reference sketch, which catches her off guard. Mizora immediately becomes embarrassed, while Kurumi freezes in shock, overwhelmed by what she has just seen. Haibara remains caught in the middle, watching both of them and trying to understand how the situation turned into such a misunderstanding. The next morning, Haibara enters the classroom while thinking about what happened the previous day. He recalls how Yamabuki suddenly collapsed and how tense the situation had become. When he arrives in class, he sees Yamabuki talking with someone. He watches them for a moment and feels that Yamabuki seems fine now. Later, Haibara goes to Mizora while she's working. She welcomes him, and he thanks her for her hard work. During their conversation, Mizora asks whether he is in the same class as Yamabuki. He confirms that he is. He also mentions that she appears to be okay now, although her presence still feels intense and overwhelming. Mizora explains that Yamabuki can be mischievous and does not tolerate others easily, but she also adds that she is not a bad person. He listens and thinks that she is strict, and he wonders whether they will get along. He then asks whether Mizora and Yamabuki went to the same elementary school. Mizora confirms this and says that she has admired Yamabuki since that time. She explains that she joined this high school because of her. She also mentions that her grades were not strong, so she studied every day after school to improve. She reflects that when people focus too much on the future, they may fail to notice what is around them. She always saw Yamabuki as serious and hardworking. Haibara listens and tells her that she should not feel awkward about it. He smiles and says it is admirable of her. He then thinks that Yamabuki is still very important to her even now. After this, Mizora asks him to check something she is working on. She shows him a female character design and asks for his opinion. Haibara looks at it and inquires about the role of the character. Mizora explains that she is a dragon knight who supports the hero. Haibara responds that the design does not look practical. He points out that the character is too exposed and would not be suitable for fighting, adding that a fighter needs proper protection and cannot operate like that. Mizora asks Haibara whether a character can fight in that condition. He replies that if something important is left unprotected, it would lead to immediate danger and defeat. Mizora questions whether magic is supposed to provide protection. Haibara asks what kind of work the character is meant to do. Mizora explains that it is simply different from what she originally imagined. He accepts her explanation and then wonders why she designed the dragon as a woman. Mizora thinks for a moment and says that it happened naturally while she was drawing, as if the idea formed on its own. Haibara reacts with confusion. Mizora also suggests that this approach may have made the process easier. She adds that, in her view, it feels more exciting this way. He remarks that she seems deeply influenced by her own imagination. Haibara begins to think about the world she is drawing and wonders how it appears from her perspective. Mizora notices his silence and asks if she has said something strange. He quickly denies it, saying it is not unusual. He then remarks that she can draw creatures and weapons in the same way and wonders whether she has always drawn like that. Mizora replies that she has never really thought about it, but suggests that he might experience something similar. She says it is not strange. When she draws, the image naturally forms in her mind. She adds that Kun's world in particular feels exciting and enjoyable to her. Haibara looks at the sketch and thinks that whenever he imagines drawing, Mizora's image comes to his mind. He feels that a new world has formed without him noticing, something created by the two of them together. He then decides to learn more about her and asks her to tell him about herself.
Here I am.